So welcome to this next presentation, and it's about what should be included in a tenancy agreement. And that's really talking about what clauses should be included. And let's go into the presentation. So what self-managing landlords must include in a tenancy agreement to be compliant and avoid complications in the future. So let's look at the agenda. Firstly, we've got to look at the legislation that makes up part of the assured short hold tenancy agreement, the essential elements that must be included in every AST, some optional elements you might want to consider, and we're going to look at the Jones & Co special conditions and how we use that part of the contract to make it clear about the expectations of both parties. Then we're going to look at the clauses that can't be included in a tenancy agreement, and when we've considered all of that, look at perhaps the best place you can get your next assured short hold tenancy agreement for you and your tenants. So after that, I'll guide you through each of the steps, and at the end I'm going to tell you exactly how to achieve a good, robust, compliant tenancy agreement. So perhaps you're watching this video because you may have found a tenant and you need to prepare your first or your next tenancy agreement. Perhaps you don't have a tenancy agreement with your tenant and you know that you need to do one, and now's the right time to start thinking about that. Perhaps you're not sure where to get your tenancy agreement from, and perhaps you want to make sure you know what clauses must be included in an assured short hold tenancy and what extra clauses you could include in your assured short hold tenancy agreement. So we'll cover all of this in the next few minutes. Before I go into that, my name's Chris Jones. I've been an accountant in the corporate career for the last 20 years. I've been a landlord since 2005, been investing and refurbishing properties for many years, and established Jones & Co letting and estate agency in 2014. I've also been a speaker since 2016 in the lettings industry and hosted a property meeting since 2019, some of which was on Zoom, the last 2.5 years back in person, and I've been running a podcast since 2023. About Jones & Co, again, was established in 2014. We've got hundreds of properties under management all across Norfolk, and our products include sales, lettings, property acquisition services, refurbishment services and coaching services, and we've got access to a wide network of property professionals in the area. So back to it, what self-managing landlords must include in a tenancy agreement to be compliant and avoid complications in the future. So let's have a look at it. Firstly, the legislation. These are the main pieces of legislation that are built into the tenancy agreement. So the Housing Act is the main one, started in 1988 and subsequently amended in 96 and 2004. The Landlord and Tenant Act in 1985, the Equalities Act in 2010, and the Immigration Act in 2014. So let's look at the next piece. These are the essential elements. I think there's 15 elements that must be included in an assured short hold tenancy agreement. So firstly, names of both parties and all adults who will be living at the property who are over 18, the address of the property, the landlord's address is important, the start and end date of your tenancy, the rent amount, when the rent is to be paid and how it is to be paid, and any clause that you want to include around rent increases. It's a good idea to put them in the tenancy agreement as well. You must include the amount of deposit that was taken, and how the deposit is to be protected. And we can go into deposit protection in later videos. The landlord's responsibilities. So reasonably long list, and includes things like who's going to insure the property. So typically the landlord needs to insure the property against fire, flood, etc. And the other repairing obligations of the landlord to keep the structure of the property in good repair and working order, and to keep the gas, electrics, the heating, all in good working order. The tenant's responsibilities. So again, fairly long lists here, but tenant must pay the rent on time. They must return the property in the same condition they got it, allowing for wear and tear. They must repair any damages that have happened either deliberately or because of neglect. They must protect against frost, for example, and they must allow access to the landlord or agent given reasonable notice. Other things the tenant is responsible for: they must not alter the property in any way without written permission beforehand. Other clauses like not bringing bikes into the house might be included. You can't sublet the property. You can't carry out a trade in a residential property in typical ASTs. You must not do anything that might annoy your neighbours, so act in a neighbourly and tenant-like manner. So quite a long list for each party, landlord and tenants, to adhere to. Other ones that you might need to include: the termination period, the grounds for eviction, and again, who's going to be responsible for insuring the property. Typically landlords responsible for the building and tenants responsible for the contents if it's their contents. So optional elements, there is some flexibility about what you can additionally include in a tenancy agreement. So you might want to talk about the ability or otherwise to have pets. This may change in due course, but at the moment you can talk about the ability to have or not have pets. The smoking, if you allow smoking or not in your properties. Responsibilities for gardening, you may want to include a break clause, and you may want to furnish your property. So if you do furnish your property, talk about what condition that should be left in. And you may have different parking arrangements with your neighbours or in your house that you might want to include in your optional elements. We think the special conditions of a tenancy agreement are a really helpful place to talk in a bit more clarity about the conditions of the tenancy agreement. So while it's implicit in the tenancy agreement what a joint tenancy is, if there's more than one person on that tenancy agreement, it's sometimes not as understood by some tenants. So we take the advantage of the special conditions to explain exactly what a joint tenancy is and what the responsibilities of tenants are under that joint tenancy. We also talk in a bit more detail about the expectations from tenants about heating and ventilation in a house, perhaps the idea of reducing condensation and perhaps mould. We do like to specify that houses should be kept clean. Light bulbs are the responsibility of tenants. Match protectors if they were provided, and not bring in electrical scooters and bikes into houses or leave them on charge, because that can risk be a fire risk. So you can put other things in your special conditions, partly to specify, but also to be a bit clearer about some of the things that are included in your original tenancy agreement. So clauses that can't be included, broadly the principle is you can't go against anything that is currently in legislation. So there's a few things that here just to consider that you can't put into a tenancy agreement. So you can't include clauses that waive or limit a tenant's statutory rights under housing law. So that's the first point. You can't go against the law in your clauses. Anything, legal requirements for protecting deposit. It's a legal requirement to protect deposit. You can't then in the clause say that I'm not going to do that. Landlords need to do that. You can't shift repair and maintenance responsibilities over to the tenant. And you can't include clauses that give the landlord excessive powers to terminate the tenancy agreement. And you can't include discriminatory clauses against race, gender, religion, disability or sexual orientation. And you can't include clauses that attempt to prevent tenants from taking legal action. A couple more, you can't include clauses that impose excessive or disproportionate penalties for breach of tenancy or allow for arbitrary or excessive rent increases. So we've got different videos on how to increase rent in this series, but that's the flavour for what the things you can't include in your tenancy agreement. So where to get your compliant, ideal tenancy agreements? A few places you can go. The .gov website has got a template that you can use, worth checking out. The National Residential Landlord Association, we use that contract in all of our tenancies. More locally, the Eastern Landlord Association also have a tenancy agreement you can use. You can get one from your local letting agent. Obviously, letting agents send contracts all the time. They have a very standard, tried and tested set of tenancy agreements that you can use. A solicitor can draw one up for you. But the point to note here is please don't use your own. It's worth go into solicitor, letting agent, NOLA or government website to get your tenancy agreement. So summary, we've been through some legislation, background, tenancy agreements. We've been through the essential elements that you need to have in your tenancy agreement, the optional elements, how we use special conditions, clauses that you can't include in your tenancy agreement, and where you can get your tenancy agreement. So now I'm going to explain how you can achieve a peace of mind by ensuring you get a compliant AST tenancy agreement. So if you've enjoyed today's presentation and you would like my team to help you do all of this for you, then do book a phone call with a member of the team. We have spaces to take a few phone calls each day, but spaces do fill up, and when they're gone, they are gone. And on the call, we will listen to your issues, understand what you are looking to achieve, and give you our best advice. If at the end of the call, it feels like we are a good fit for you, we will see if we can work with you. So please book a call. And in the meantime, if you've got some value from this, please subscribe to the channel, like and comment on any of the videos that you watch. Click on the links below this video to get more of our free content. And in the meantime, here is to the success of your property business. Thank you, take care.